Nigel Ernest James Mansell, CBE, is a retired British racing driver who won both the Formula One World Championship and the kart IndyCar World Series. Mansell was the reigning F1 champion when he moved over to kart, becoming the first person to win the kart title in his debut season, and making him the only person to hold both titles simultaneously. His career in Formula One spanned 15 seasons, with his final 2 full seasons of top-level racing being spent in the kart series. Mansell remains the most successful British Formula One driver of all time in terms of race wins with 31 victories, and is 6th overall on the Formula One race winners list behind Michael Schumacher, Alain Prost, Ayrton Senna, Sebastian Vettel and Fernando Alonso. He held the record for the most number of poles set in a single season, which was broken in 2011 by Sebastian Vettel. He was rated in the top 10 Formula One drivers of all time by longtime Formula One commentator Murray Walker. In 2008, Entertainment and Sports Programming Network ranked him 24th on their top drivers of all time. He was also ranked number 9 of the 50 greatest F1 drivers of all time by the Times Online, on a list that also included such drivers as Alain Prost, Ayrton Senna, Jackie Stewart and Jim Clark. Mansell raced in the Grand Prix Masters Series in 2005, and won the championship title. He later signed a one-off race deal for the Scuderia Cos GT race team to drive their number 63 Ferrari F430 GT2 car at Silverstone on May 6, 2007. He has since competed in additional sports car races with his sons Leo and Greg, including the 2010 24 Hours of Le Mans. He was inducted to the International Motorsports Hall of Fame in 2005. He is the current president of one of the UK's largest youth work charities, UK Youth. He is also president of the IAM. In September 2014, it was announced that Mansell would be opening a Mitsubishi franchise on Jersey later in the month. Early life and career: Nigel Ernest James Mansell was born on August 8, 1953 in Upton-upon-Severn, Worcestershire, the son of Eric, an engineer, and Joyce Mansell. Mansell spent 11 years of his life as a special constable in the Isle of Man during his driving career and in Devon and Cornwall after he retired from racing and was developing a golf course in Devon. He had a fairly slow start to his racing career, using his own money to help work his way up the ranks. After considerable success in kart racing, he moved to the Formula Ford Series to the disapproval of his father. In 1976, Mansell won 6 of the 9 races he took part in, including his debut event at Mallory Park. He entered 42 races the following year and won 33 to become the 1977 British Formula Ford champion, despite suffering a broken neck in a qualifying session at Brands Hatch. Doctors told him he had been perilously close to quadriplegia, that he would be confined for 6 months and would never drive again. Mansell discharged himself from the hospital and returned to racing. 3 weeks before the accident he had resigned his job as an aerospace engineer, having previously sold most of his personal belongings to finance his foray into Formula Ford. Later that year he was given the chance to race a Lola T570 Formula 3 car at Silverstone. He finished 4th and decided that he was ready to move into the higher formula. Mansell raced in Formula 3 in 1978 to Euro 1980. Mansell's first season in Formula 3 started with a pole position and a second-place finish. However, the car was not competitive, as a commercial deal with Unipart required his team to use Triumph Dolomite engines that were vastly inferior to the Toyota engines used by the leading teams. After 3 seventh-place finishes and a 4th in his last race, he parted from the team. The next season saw him take a paid drive with Dave Price Racing. Following a first win in the series at Silverstone in March, he went on to finish 8th in the championship. His racing was consistent, but a collision with Andrea de Cesaris resulted in a huge cartwheeling crash which he was lucky to survive. Again he was hospitalized, this time with broken vertebrae. His driving was noticed by Colin Chapman, owner of Lotus, and shortly after his accident, hiding the extent of his injury with painkillers, Mansell performed well enough during a tryout at the Paul Ricard circuit with Lotus, where he was pitted against a number of other drivers to determine who was going to take the second seat for the 1980 season alongside Mario Andretti, as Argentinian Carlos Reutemann was leaving to go to Williams. Driving a 79, the seat eventually went to Italian driver Leo De Angelis, but Mansell was selected to become a test driver for the Great Norfolk-based Formula One team. Formula One, 1980 Euro 1984, Lotus, 1980 and 1981, Mansell's skill as a test driver, including setting the fastest lap around Silverstone in a Lotus car at the time, impressed Chapman enough to give him a trio of starts in F1 in 1980, driving a development version of the Lotus 81 used by the team, the Lotus 81B. In his Formula One debut at the 1980 Austrian Grand Prix, a fuel leak in the cockpit that developed shortly before the start of the race left him with painful first and second-degree burns on his buttocks. An engine failure forced him to retire from that race, and his second, however, an accident at his third event at Imola meant he failed to qualify. Team leader Mario Andretti wrote his car off before the final race of the season, and Mansell had to give up his car for Andretti to compete, and Andretti announced he was leaving to move to Alfa Romeo at the end of the season, leaving Lotus with a vacant race seat. Despite Mansell being unpopular with sponsor David Thiam of Essex Petroleum, and much speculation in the press that a John Pierre area would fill the vacancy, Chapman announced at the start of the season the seat would be filled by Mansell. Mansell's 4 years as a full-time Lotus driver were a struggle, as the cars were unreliable and he was continually outperformed by teammate Leo De Angelis. Out of 59 race starts with the team, he finished just 24 of them. He managed a best finish of third place, which he achieved 5 times during the 4 years, including Lotus's 5th race of the 1981 season, and only the 7th of Mansell's Formula One career. Teammate Leo De Angelis took a surprise win at the 1982 Austrian Grand Prix, and was frequently faster than his less experienced colleague Mansell, 1982. During the 1982 season, Mansell planned to race in the 24 Hours of Le Mans sports car event in order to earn extra money. At the time, Mansell was paid £50,000 a year and was offered £10,000 to take part in Le Mans. Chapman believed that by entering the Le Mans race, Mansell was exposing himself to unnecessary risk and paid him £10,000 to not take part in the race. Chapman extended Mansell's contract to the end of the 1984 season in a deal that made him a millionaire. As a result of the gestures, such as described above, Mansell became very close to Chapman, who made him equal number one in the team with De Angelis, and was devastated by Chapman's sudden death in 1982. In his autobiography, Mansell stated that when Chapman died, the bottom dropped out of my world. Part of me died with him. I had lost a member of my family. Following Chapman's death, relationships at Lotus became strained, as replacement team principal Peter Waugh did not have a high regard for him as a driver or person. Waugh, in his book titled Team Lotus, My View from the Pit Wall, stated about the 1982 season, after carefully analyzing the season just finished, it was completely clear who was the number one. It was Leo. He was faster, he had outqualified Nigel 10 times to 3. Leo had 7 points scoring finishes to Nigel's 2, and in addition to Leo's win in Austria, had a tally of more than 3 times the number of points gained by Nigel. What is more, the margin by which Leo eclipsed his teammate in qualifying overall was a huge 4.5%. And all this in the year when, as near as can be reasonably achieved, the two drivers were given equal equipment and treatment. 1983, De Angelis was then promoted back to outright number one for the 1983 season. This was demonstrated by the fact that he had exclusive use of the quick but unreliable Renault turbocharged 93T for the whole season, and Mansell did not get to drive a turbocharged car until the 9th round, the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, a race where he climbed from 16th to 2nd and eventually finished 4th in a brand new, hastily designed 94T. Due to their tumultuous relationship and a lack of decent results, Waugh was not keen on honouring the last year of the contract that Mansell had signed with Chapman. However, with encouragement from Lotus's sponsors, John Player Special, and with the only other top British driver already confirmed to be joining the factory Renault team, it was announced Mansell would be staying with the team. 1984. In 1984, Mansell finished in the championship top 10 for the first time, and took his first career pole position but still finished behind teammate De Angelis, who finished third, in the championship. At the 1984 Monaco Grand Prix, Mansell surprised many by overtaking Alain Prost in a wet race for the lead, but soon after retired from the race after losing control on the slippery painted lines on the road surface on the run up the hill on lap 15. Late in the season, Lotus announced the recruitment of Ayrton Senna for the following year, leaving Mansell with no race seat at Lotus. After receiving offers from Arrows and Williams, and first turning down Williams's offer, it was announced before the Dutch Grand Prix that he would indeed be joining Williams. Mansell was remembered by many that year when he collapsed while pushing his car to the finish line after the transmission failed on the last lap of the 1984 Dallas Grand Prix. The race was one of the hottest on record, and after 2 hours of driving in 104 degree Fahrenheit conditions, Mansell fainted while pushing his car over the line to salvage a sixth-place finish in a race of which he had led half, having started from pole. In his autobiography, Mansell claimed that his final race with the Lotus team the 1984 Portuguese Grand Prix was heavily compromised by War's unwillingness to give Mansell the brake pads he desired for the race. With 18 laps of the race remaining, and with Mansell in second position, the brakes on his car failed. On Mansell's departure, War was quoted as saying, "He'll never win a Grand Prix as long as I have a hole in my arse." 1985 1988, Williams. 1985. In 1985, Frank Williams hired Mansell to drive alongside Keke Rosberg as part of the Williams team, Mansell later saying, "Keke was probably one of the best teammates I've had in my career." Mansell was given the now famous red 5 number on his car, which he carried on subsequent Williams and Newman Haas cars and which was brought to the public's attention mainly through commentator Murray Walker and his enthusiastic commentary for the BBC. Rosberg, the 1982 world champion who was heading into his 4th season with the team, was initially against Williams signing Mansell based on the clash the pair had at Dallas the previous year. Other factors were what Rosberg later said in a 1986 interview with second-hand information about Mansell which ultimately proved to be false. The drivers found they got along well and from early in the pre-season formed a good working and personal relationship. 1985 initially appeared to provide more of the same for Mansell, although he was closer to the pace than before, especially as the Honda engines became more competitive by mid-season. During practice for the 1985 French Grand Prix, Mansell unwillingly broke the record for the highest speed crash in Formula One history. At the end of the Paul Ricard circuit's 1.8 km long Mistral straight, he went off at the fast Corby de Sainz at over 200 mph in his Williams FW10. Mansell suffered a concussion which kept him out of the race. Teammate Rosberg claimed the pole for the race and finished second behind the Brabham BMW of Nelson Piquet. Mansell achieved second place at the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa-Francorchamps, and followed this with his first victory in 72 starts at the European Grand Prix at Brands Hatch in England. He achieved a second straight victory at the South African Grand Prix in Kyalami. These triumphs helped turn Mansell into a Formula One star. 1986. Going into 1986, the Williams-Honda team had a car capable of winning regularly, and Mansell had established himself as a potential world championship contender. He also had a new teammate in twice world champion Nelson Piquet, who had joined Williams looking to be a regular winner and contender again after the Brabham BMWs had become increasingly unreliable and uncompetitive. The Brazilian publicly described Mansell as an uneducated blockhead, and had also criticized his wife, Roseanne. Unperturbed by Piquet's mind games, Mansell went on to record 5 Grand Prix wins in 1986 and also played part in one of the closest finishes in Formula One history, finishing second to Ayrton Senna in the Spanish Grand Prix at Jerez by a mere 0.014 seconds. The 1986 season went right down to the wire in Adelaide, Australia for the Australian Grand Prix with Prost, Piquet and Mansell all still in contention for the title. The equation was simple: Prost and Piquet needed to win and have Mansell finish no higher than 4th. After aiming for a third-place finish which would guarantee him the title, Mansell would narrowly miss out on winning it after his left rear tire exploded in spectacular fashion on the main straight with only 19 laps of the race to go. In a 2012 interview for Sky Sports Legends of F1, Mansell revealed that, had he hit the wall rather than wrestling the car safely to a halt in the runoff area at the end of the straight, the stewards would most likely have red-flagged the race. As the race was over two-thirds distance, he would have kept his position and won his first F1 world title. Instead, Mansell ended the season as runner-up to Alain Prost. His efforts in 1986 led to his being voted the BBC Sports Personality of the Year. 1986 proved to be a tough year for both Mansell and the Williams team, off the track at least. After a pre-season test session at the Paul Ricard Routes in the south of France, team owner Frank Williams was involved in a horrific road accident which left him a tetraplegic. Williams would not return to the scene until making a surprise appearance at the British Grand Prix at Brands Hatch, where Mansell and Piquet finished 1-2. Williams' absence from the day-to-day running of the team actually created tension between the team and engine supplier Honda. The Japanese giant regarded dual world champion Nelson Piquet as the team's number one driver and were reportedly unhappy that the team's co-owner and technical director Patrick Head did not rein in Mansell during races and allowed him to take both points and wins from Piquet. As it was, while Williams dominated the Constructors' Championship, the two drivers took enough points from each other to allow McLaren's Alain Prost to sneak through and win the Drivers' Championship. Before the season had started, Honda had reportedly attempted to persuade Frank Williams to fire Mansell and replace him with their own test driver Satoru Nakajima. Williams, who was always more interested in the constructors' title than the drivers as it showed that his team was the best, refused to do this, rightly believing that having two proven F1 winners in Piquet and Mansell would better serve the team than Nakajima would as an F1 rookie. 1987, 6 more wins followed in 1987, including an emotional and hugely popular victory at Silverstone for the British Grand Prix in which he came back from 28 seconds behind in 30 laps to beat teammate Piquet, with his car running out of fuel on the slowing down lap. However, at the Italian Grand Prix, he missed a gear and let Piquet, who was using an active suspension car, through to win. A heavy qualifying accident at Suzuka in Japan for the penultimate race of the season severely injured Mansell's back, and as a result of Mansell absent from the remaining two races, Piquet became champion for the third time even though he failed to score any points in these two remaining races. Piquet called his win over Mansell as a win of luck over stupidity. The Brazilian also added he won because he was more consistent than his teammate, racking up points and podiums where Mansell often ran into trouble. Piquet's was a percentage driving policy which worked well in the ultra-competitive Williams Honda, whereas Mansell was a hard charger who many felt often pushed his luck too far. 1988. In 1988, for the first time in his career, Mansell was a team's undisputed number one driver, having won more races in the previous two seasons than any other driver. However, Williams lost the turbo power of Honda to McLaren, and had to settle with a naturally aspirated Judd V8 engine in its first season in F1. A dismal season followed, which saw Mansell's Williams team experiment with a terribly unreliable active suspension system produced by the Honda Turbo, but struggled with the 600 bhp Judd V8. Mansell would complete only 2 of the 14 races in which he appeared in 1988, both being podium finishes. Ironically, one of these was a second place at the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, where literally overnight the team had dumped its active suspension, and reverted to a passive suspension setup. Mansell developed chickenpox in the summer of 1988, and after a competitive drive in the very hot conditions of the 1988 Hungarian Grand Prix, the illness became even worse, forcing him to miss the next 2 Grands Prix in Belgium, where he was replaced by Martin Brundle, and Italy, where he was infamously replaced by Frenchman Jean-Louis Schlesser. By missing the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, Mansell missed the traditional welcome by the Tifosi for a newly signed Ferrari driver after he had announced he would be leaving Williams to join the Maranello-based team for 1989. One thing Mansell did relish about the 1988 season was no longer having Nelson Piquet as his teammate. Piquet had left the team to join Lotus, who were running Honda engines, though Mansell relished consistently outperforming the reigning world champion in his more powerful Lotus Honda, and it was only unreliability that prevented the Englishman from scoring more points than Piquet. His teammate in 1988 was Italian veteran Riccardo Patrese, the most experienced Grand Prix driver at the time. Patrese had replaced the injured Mansell at the 1987 Australian Grand Prix, and the two would form a good personal and working relationship. 1989 a Euro 1990, Ferrari, 1989. In preparation for the 1989 season, Mansell became the last Ferrari driver to be personally selected by Enzo Ferrari before his death in August 1988, an honor Mansell described as one of the greatest in my entire career. Enzo Ferrari presented a 1989 Ferrari F40 as a gift to Mansell. In Italy he became known as Il Leone by the Tifosi because of his fearless driving style. The season was one of change in the sport, with the banning of turbo engines by the FIA and the introduction of the electronically controlled semi-automatic transmission by Ferrari. Mansell believed that 1989 would be a development year and that he would be able to challenge for the championship the following season. In his first appearance with the team he scored a very unlikely win in the Brazilian Grand Prix at the Autocubdromo Internacional Nelson Piquet in Rio de Janeiro. His least favorite track, and the home race of his bitter rival Piquet. He later joked that he had booked an early flight home for halfway through the race as he predicted the car's new electronic gearbox would last only a few laps. Mansell became the first driver to win a race in a car with a semi-automatic gearbox. He also remained the last man to win on his Ferrari debut until Kmira Currency Ika Paragraph Nen in the 2007 Australian Grand Prix. The rest of 1989 was characterised by gearbox and various other problems, including a disqualification at the Canadian Grand Prix and a black-flagged incident at the Portuguese Grand Prix for reversing in the pit lane, which resulted in a ban for the next race in Spain. However, Mansell finished fourth in the championship with the help of a memorable second win for Ferrari at the tight and twisty Hungaroring for the Hungarian Grand Prix. Early in practice Mansell had seen that trying to qualify the car high on the grid was a pointless exercise and he decided instead to concentrate on a good race setup. After qualifying 12th and not even being considered a chance for the race, he charged his way through the field until he pulled off a sensational passing maneuver on the McLaren Honda of world champion Ayrton Senna on lap 58 to take a lead he would not lose. 1990, a tough 1990 followed with Ferrari, in which his car suffered more reliability problems, forcing him to retire from 7 races. He was paired with Alain Prost and who took over as the team's lead driver. Mansell recalls one incident where at the 1990 British Grand Prix, the car he drove did not handle the same as in the previous race where he had taken pole position. On confronting the mechanics, it transpired that Prost saw Mansell as having a superior car and as a result, they were swapped without telling Mansell. After retiring from the race, he announced he was retiring from the sport altogether at the end of the season. This, combined with the fact that Frenchman Prost was not only a triple world champion and the winner of more Grands Prix than anyone in history, but also spoke fluent Italian, whereas Mansell's Italian was only conversational at best, gave Prost greater influence within the Maranello-based team. Mansell scored only a single win, at the 1990 Portuguese Grand Prix, and finished a thrilling second to Nelson Piquet in Australia, and finished 5th in the World Championship. His retirement plans were halted when Frank Williams again stepped in. Williams signed Mansell on October 1, 1990 after Mansell was insured. The contract stated that he would be the focus of the team, having experienced being the number 2 driver at Ferrari. Mansell would be paid £4.6 million a season, a deal which made him the highest-paid British sportsman at the time. 1991 to Euro 1992, return to Williams. 1991, Mansell's return to Williams was not straightforward. He would agree to return only if a list of demands were met, including undisputed number 1 status over Riccardo Patrese, guarantees of support in a wide variety of areas with each guarantee in writing, and assurances from suppliers such as Renault and Elf that they would do everything necessary to help him win. Frank Williams said the demands were impossible. Mansell concluded that if that were the case he would be happy to retire. 3 weeks later the impossible had happened and Mansell was a Williams driver. His second stint with Williams was even better than the first. Back in the familiar red 5 feet, he won 5 races in 1991, most memorably in the Spanish Grand Prix. In this race he went wheel-to-wheel with Ayrton Senna, with only centimeters to spare, at over 320 km/h on the main straight. Quite a different spectacle was offered following Mansell's victory in the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. Senna's car had stopped on the final lap, but, rather than leave his rival stranded out on the circuit, Mansell pulled over on his victory lap and allowed Senna to ride on the Williams sidepod back to the pits. The Williams team's decision to develop their new semi-automatic gearbox by racing with it at the start of the season, was at the cost of points in the opening rounds of the championship. Senna was on 40 points with 4 straight wins to open the season by the time Mansell gained his first finish with a second in Monaco. Mansell then had the next race in Canada practically won when his Williams FW14 stopped half a lap from the finish with what was reported to be transmission failure, though it was suspected that Mansell had let his engine revs drop too low while he was waving to the crowd in celebration and stalled his engine. Ironically, this handed Nelson Piquet his 23rd and last F1 race win. Despite a good mid-season, which included a hat-trick of victories, Senna's consistency meant that he finished second in the championship for the 3rd time in his career, this time behind Senna. 1992 would be Mansell's finest season. He started the year with 5 straight victories. At the 6th round of the season in Monaco, he took pole and dominated much of the race. However, with 7 laps remaining, Mansell suffered a loose wheel nut and was forced in the pits, emerging behind Ayrton Senna's McLaren Honda. Mansell, on fresh tyres, set a lap record almost 2 seconds quicker than Senna's and closed from 5.2 to 1.9 seconds in only 2 laps. The pair duelled around Monaco for the final 4 laps but Mansell could find no way past, finishing just 0.2 seconds behind the Brazilian. Mansell became the most successful British driver of all time when he won the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, as he surpassed Jackie Stewart's record of 27 wins with his 28th. Mansell was crowned Formula One World Champion early in the season at the Hungarian Grand Prix, the 11th round of that season, where his second-place finish clinched a Drivers' Championship, securing the title in the least number of Grands Prix since the 16-race season format started. Mansell also set the then record for the most number of wins in one season. Both records stood until broken by Schumacher in 2002. He managed 14 pole positions that year, a record only broken by Sebastian Vettel in 2011 in the Brazilian Grand Prix on November 26. Other Formula One records set in 1992 that he still holds are the highest percentage of pole positions in a season, most wins from pole position in a season, most races before becoming world champion and most runner-up championship finishes before becoming world champion. Mansell also holds the record for obtaining pole position and scoring fastest lap and subsequently retiring from the race. He won the BBC Sports Personality of the Year award again in 1992, one of only 3 people to have won the award twice. Kart Indy Car World Series. Despite being world champion, Mansell had a public disagreement with Williams. In his autobiography, Mansell writes that this was because of a deal made at the previous Hungarian Grand Prix, which Williams reneged on, and the prospect of Frenchman Alain Prost joining the Renault-powered team. Williams had neglected to tell Mansell that Prost had signed for 1993 at only the 2nd race of the 1992 season in Mexico, a position that Mansell felt would be similar to their days together at Ferrari. To boot, Williams had Senna offering to drive the second car for free and decided that there was little sense in paying the high fees Mansell went on to demand. With the original offer revoked, Mansell, with no teams near the competitiveness of Williams, decided that enough was enough. An 11th-hour offer was made to him at the Italian Grand Prix, but by then the damage was done. Mansell retired from F1. Mansell consequently left to join the Newman-Haas kart team in 1993. He took over the seat of Michael Andretti, who coincidentally had left kart to race in Formula One for McLaren. At the season opener at Surfers Paradise, Australia, he became the first rookie to take pole position and win his first race. A few weeks later, however, he suffered a substantial crash at the Phoenix International Raceway, severely injuring his back. At the 1993 Indianapolis 500, Mansell would lead the race only to finish third after losing the lead to Emerson Fittipaldi and Arie Luyendyk after a poor restart. On his 40th birthday, however, Mansell would avenge his loss at Indianapolis to score a 500-mile race victory at Michigan, considered by many a tougher 500-mile race to win. He would go on to score 5 wins for the 1993 kart season, which, with more high-placed finishes, was good enough to earn him the championship. This enabled Mansell to become the only driver in history to hold both the Formula One and kart championships at the same time, because when he won the 1993 kart championship he was still the reigning F1 world champion, with the 1993 F1 championship not yet having been decided. Following this successful season in kart, Mansell received several awards, including a gold medal from the Royal Automobile Club and the 1993 ISPA Award for Best Driver. His Newman-Haas car was much less reliable the following year, 1994, and results suffered. It was during the season that Mansell wore out his welcome in the United States with glimpses of rude behavior, particularly after he was knocked out of the Indianapolis 500. After the crash, he stormed out of the track hospital, and refused medical care. When reporter Dr. Jerry Punch asked Mansell if he had spoken with Dennis Vitolo, the driver who had crashed into him, Mansell replied, "You speak to him," and shoved the camera away. Subsequently, Mansell was due to sign autographs at a Kmart store, but because of a lack of demand the event was cancelled. Mansell was also the catalyst for the breakdown in the relationship between himself and Mario Andretti. Mario has since remarked, "I guess if Ronnie Peterson was the best teammate I ever had, Nigel Mansell was the worst, and I had a lot of respect for him as a driver, but not as a man." Brief return to Formula One. In 1994 Mansell made a Formula One comeback. After the untimely death of Ayrton Senna, he returned to Formula One with Williams, replacing young rookie David Coulthard for the French Grand Prix in the last 3 races of the season. Mansell was paid approximately £900,000 per race, compared to Williams's lead driver at the time, Damon Hill, being paid £300,000 for the entire season. Mansell's return was helped by Bernie Ecclestone helping unravel his contracts in the United States. It was important for F1 to have a world champion driving that season, and with worldwide TV viewing figures starting to decline, they needed Mansell. The 40-year-old wasn't as quick as Damon Hill in race trim, but signs that his speeds were coming back were evident in Japan during a fantastic battle with the Ferrari of Gene Ailsey. Mansell took his final Grand Prix victory in Adelaide, the last race of the season, having out-qualified the 2 title contenders at the time, Damon Hill and Michael Schumacher, in the process. The plan initially was for Mansell to protect Hill from Schumacher, but both drivers passed him at the start and eventually collided, handing Schumacher his first world title. Williams had an option on Mansell's services for 1995 which Mansell was convinced they would take. Williams, however, opted for youth over experience and hired Coulthard. 1995, McLaren. Mansell was quick again, and on the back of winning 2 titles, he was still hot property. After losing the Williams seat to David Coulthard, Mansell signed to drive for McLaren in 1995. It was well documented that Mansell and Ron Dennis never saw eye to eye, and Dennis had reportedly said he would never hire a driver he did not understand, a category in which he placed Mansell. McLaren's title sponsors Marlboro wanted a world champion, whereas McLaren and their engine suppliers Mercedes wanted a lower-key profile driver for what was their first official year back in Formula One since 1955. Dennis also had 2 other options. The first option was an unsuccessful attempt to lure Alain Prost out of retirement, though the 4-time champion ultimately declined. The second option, reigning champion Schumacher, was contracted to Benetton, and he would not leave the team that year as they had obtained use of the championship-winning Renault V10 engines, which left Mansell. Media speculated from the start that they would not last together because of their 2 contrasting personalities. Before the season started, Mansell could not fit into the narrow car and was deputized by Mark Blundell for the opening 2 rounds. Mansell's car was completed in 33 days and in time for Imola, where despite being in the top 6 late in the race, a clash with Eddie Irvine saw him finish 10th and out of the points. The Spanish Grand Prix saw Mansell become frustrated over his car's handling characteristics. He chose to retire after just 2 races with the team. Mansell cited the decision to retire as his not wanting to make up the numbers and with no hope of the McLaren MP4/10 being competitive. A few testing sessions with F1 teams including Jordan suggested another comeback could be on the cards, but it never happened. Reports at the time suggested that the Mansell-Jordan partnership for 1997 was a real possibility with Eddie Jordan's title sponsor willing to pay for the deal. British Touring Car Championship. Mansell took part in the 1993 TOCA shootout, held at Donington Park. Mansell drove a Ford Mondeo with his usual red number 5. The race ended in disaster for Mansell. He was knocked unconscious following a crash with 6 laps remaining. He lost control of his car through the exit of the old hairpin, overcorrected the slide and collided with Tiffany Adele's Vauxhall Cavalier, resulting in a spin and a heavy impact with the tyre wall under the bridge. Mansell made a return to racing in 1998 in the British Touring Car Championship, driving in a Ford Mondeo for 3 rounds. With the number 5 already taken by James Thompson, Mansell raced with the red number 55. At his first event at Donington Park, he retired 3 laps into the sprint race, meaning he would start the feature race in 19th position on the grid. As the conditions changed and the track got wetter, Mansell found himself leading the race for several laps, and he finished in 5th position. The race was regarded by many fans as one of the greatest in touring car history. It was to be his best finish in the series, as he failed to finish either race at the next round he participated in at Brands Hatch, and at his final race at Silverstone he finished in 14th and 11th place. Having competed in 3 of the 13 rounds, he finished 18th out of 21 in the Drivers' Championship. Subsequent appearances. On July 16, 2005, Mansell took part in a Race of Legends exhibition event at the Norrisring round of the DTM. He competed against other Formula One world champions Jody Scheckter, Alain Prost and Emerson Fittipaldi, as well as motorcycle Grand Prix world champions Mick Doohan and Johnny Cecotto, each driver having an opportunity to drive Audi, Mercedes and Opel cars. Prost was announced as the winner by the DTM organizers. Mansell became a financial stakeholder and a driver in the new Grand Prix Masters Series. Following a period of testing and developing the car, Mansell made a successful race comeback by winning the inaugural race of the series in Kyalami in November 2005. After the success of the race at Kyalami, 4 dates were scheduled for the GP Masters Series in 2006, including one at Silverstone. Mansell won the season opener at Qatar in April from pole position. The Monza round of the series was cancelled due to noise limitations at the venue, whilst technical issues quickly ruled him out of the Silverstone race. Also in 2006 he appeared at Brands Hatch, scene of his first Grand Prix win, in October 1985, driving some demonstration laps in the BMW M3 GTR that Andy Prohl drove to victory in the 2005 24 Hours Na 1/4 Nürburgring, as part of the World Touring Car Championship event. On the weekend of May 6, 2007 he made an appearance in the second round of the FIA GT Championship at Silverstone driving a Ferrari 430 GT2 for the Scuderia Cos team. He was paired with Chris Nachos, finishing 7th in class and 21st overall. Mansell, with his son Leo, tested a Chamberlain Synergy Team Le Mans prototype Lola ARB 06/10 during the week commencing July 14, 2008, at the Estoril circuit. The pair were said to be considering a drive in the American Le Mans Series, possibly commencing as soon as October 2008 in the Petit Le Mans event, although neither driver was in the final field. On July 3, 2009, Mansell tested his other son Greg's World Series by Renault car at the Silverstone circuit, setting a best time 6 seconds off the pace of the fastest driver in the session. Mansell took part in the last round of the 2009 Le Mans Series, the 1000 km of Silverstone, driving Team LNT's Ginetta Zeitgeist GZ09S alongside his son Greg and team boss Lawrence Tomlinson. Mansell raced a Ginetta Zeitgeist GZ09S in the 2010 24 Hours of Le Mans, alongside his two sons. According to the BBC, this was the first time a father has raced at Le Mans in the same car as his two sons. However, in the race he crashed out after only 5 laps, following a puncture. For the 2010 Formula One season, the sporting regulations were changed so that a former driver sits on the stewards panel. Mansell took this role at the 2010, 2011 and 2012 British Grand Prix. Endorsements. On October 1, 2009, Nigel appeared as the face of Euronics. In 2010, Nigel paired with Iranian-British comic Ahmed Jalali in a UK television advertising campaign for price comparison website moneysupermarket.com, and at the end of the first ad, Jalali put a fake moustache on Mansell's upper lip. Video games. There were 3 video games endorsed by Mansell: Nigel Mansell's Grand Prix, Nigel Mansell's World Championship, and Newman-Haas IndyCar. Mansell also appeared as a playable driver for Williams in Codemasters F1 2013. Personal life. Mansell currently lives in Jersey, Channel Islands. Mansell lived in Port Erin on the Isle of Man during most of his F1 career until 1995. A keen golf player, Mansell revealed a desire to compete in the British Open Golf Championship and briefly participated in the 1988 Australian Open. Mansell is the owner of the Team UK youth cycling team. In 2009, Mansell purchased a personal protection dog for a £15k. The dog, a German Shepherd called Geisha, had been professionally trained and was bought to protect Mansell and his family at his home in Jersey. After his official retirement from Formula One in 1995, he shaved off his well-known moustache. The last time before that he appeared without the moustache was in the first half of the 1988 season. In 2011, Mansell, an amateur magician, was accepted as a member of the Magic Circle, the private club based in central London. His sons Leo and Greg are also racing drivers, while his daughter Chloe is a designer. Helmet. Mansell raced with a blue helmet with 2 red and white arrows on each side forming on the front view a drawing resembling the Union flag with the upper angles of the arrows united by a red and white U, with the white chin area. When he entered to Williams, it was added a blue ring on the white part of the helmet. His sons Leo and Greg inherited his helmet design, but Leo's helmet has the red chin area and the white part that envelopes the visor is red with white outline, while Greg's helmet has the blue chin area and the white area that envelopes the visor is blue with white outline. Red 5 inches. Although teams and motor racing series are generally allocated numbers, for many years Mansell has been associated with the number 5. This began when he joined Williams in 1985 and was allocated car number 5. For the first 4 races of the 1985 season, both Williams cars had white numbers, but from a distance the numerals 5 and 6 resembled each other. As a consequence, it was decided to give Mansell's car a red number to make it more distinctive. While this was initially just for recognition, BBC F1 commentator Murray Walker began describing Mansell's car as Red 5, leading to Mansell retaining the red-coloured number throughout his first spell at Williams. On his return to the team in 1991, Williams had retained the number 5 car, allowing Mansell to race as Red 5 once again. After his departure to IndyCar racing in 1993 to drive for Newman-Haas, he again retained the red number 5. When he returned to Williams for 4 races in 1994, the team's numbers were 0 and 2 as they had won the drivers' and constructors' titles in 1993 but would not run number 1 as Alain Prost had retired. Damon Hill drove car number 0 while Mansell raced the number 2 with the number on the nose of the car painted red. So associated with the Red 5 is Mansell that, in 2004, he purchased a yacht from Sunseeker, one of his longtime sponsors, which he named Red 5. Awards. Mansell was awarded the title of BBC Sports Personality of the Year in both 1986 and 1992. Only 2 other people have won the award twice, one of whom being fellow racing driver and former F1 world champion Damon Hill. Mansell was inducted into the International Motorsports Hall of Fame in 2005. Already Officer of the Order of the British Empire, Mansell was appointed Commander of the Order of the British Empire in the 2012 New Year Honours for services to children and young people. Racing career results, complete European Formula 2 Championship results, key, Formula 1 World Championship results, key, American Open Wheel Racing results, kart, key, complete British Touring Car Championship results, key, complete Grand Prix Masters results, key, complete 24 Hours of Le Mans results, notes. References: Hamilton, Morris Frank Williams Macmillan ISBN 0-333-71716-3, Mansell, Nigel My Autobiography Collins Willow ISBN 0-00-218497-4, War, Peter Team Lotus, My View from the Pit Wall Haynes Publishing ISBN 978-0-85733-123-6, BTCC Pages, Crash.net, External links, Official website, Nigel Mansell on Twitter, Nigel Mansell at the Internet Movie Database.